Okay, that's done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we all know that English is used as the medium of instruction today globally, but historically, in certain locations on Earth, it has been out there for centuries. For example, in my own context in Turkey, Robert College was founded in Istanbul in 1863, if I'm not mistaken, by the US missionaries, and it's one of the earliest EMI schools in the world outside the Anglophone countries, and it's the first ever US school outside the US borders or its colonies. But considering its contemporary exponential growth, I think we can refer back to the post-war period together with the Second World War after 1945. European countries prioritize their collaborations and cooperations for becoming an empowered union. And in turn, several mobility and exchange programs emerged together with other scientific advancements and academic advancements. We all know all these histories. And although European Commission did not probably seek for one language dominating all the other languages as the medium of education, somehow English became the global lingua franca, and thus it's very frequently used as the medium of instruction today, especially together with the second millennia. This growth exponentially become very widespread, as we all know. In turn, this exponential growth, what Makarov calls it as the unstoppable train, as you know, has some consequences, because EMI is basically for the non-native speakers based on its former definition, and therefore teaching students in another language other than their mother tongue is a big phenomena, and it has lots of consequences. It has lots of challenges. And when we head back for the literature again, it is often theorized and studied that content specialists often blame or maybe criticize rather than blame, let's say, criticize their students' English proficiency levels on the one hand, and language instructors often back their students and they say they are trained enough, they are proficient enough. And oftentimes, especially in such contexts as mine, content specialists often criticize their students' academic proficiency, but language instructors usually do not perceive it that way, or vice versa. At the end of the day, there is a huge gap out there. It's about English for academic purposes. The main reason of this gap is, again, content specialists usually do not regard themselves as responsible for training students' English proficiencies. But they, of course, need it, and they regard them solely as content specialists. On the other hand, language instructors usually do not have the satisfactory background and training in terms of the contents of the EMI programs. And at least in my context, that's not a requisite for becoming an EAP professional. So in turn, the result is out there again, a gap in the academic proficiencies, academic English proficiencies of the students. And when we dive deep inside the chronology of ESP, we see that this challenge has always been out there as a chronic problem, and lots of scientific, systematic research and attempts have been conducted throughout the history. Even it's ongoing, as we all know. Starting from 1960s at least, selection and gradation of the content and genres have started. Later on followed corpus analysis, which is also one of my former interests at least. And then these analysis paved way for the analysis of the university textbooks and all kinds of texts indeed. And register analysis, discourse analysis, needs analysis, they have all been studied and are still being studied very frequently by the researchers. As a matter of fact, I think curriculum design as a systematic way of handling all higher education owes a lot of thanks for the ESP, especially EAP, because it derived out of a problem in ESP, and today it's a mandatory of all fields. And when I look for the methodology of curriculum design in many textbooks, in many scientific books like Richard's Curriculum Development book, that's just one example, I see at least these 7 foundational stages for developing curriculum, starting from needs analysis till evaluation, needs analysis and situation analysis, learning outcomes, determining the learning outcomes, and organizing the courses comes later on, and developing the materials, finding effective teaching techniques, suitable ones, and evaluation of this circle, and also the students' success. This is the literary background of this current research indeed, and we utilized, by the way, all these stages as much as we could in our research as well, but with some additions such as generative AI and Balif's can-do framework. I will later mention it as well. And my personal experiences as an EAP practitioner of any kind. Throughout my 20 years career, I had been in 2 positions. One at a state EMI university as an EAP instructor, and the other is my current affiliation as a teacher trainer at TEFL at the TEFL program, again in another at another EMI university. And during these 2 positions, I had 3 fundamental milestones that shaped this current research that we will today be talking on indeed. One is about corpus analysis, the other is about my early AI encounter, and finally my encounter with Balip ecosystem in general. First of all, can I ask whether you know what you see in these 2 images right now? Can you help me? I'm unable to follow the chat, and maybe your mics are off right now.
Someone said tofu.
It looks like tofu. Yeah, very lovely.
The Rosetta Stone says
Yeah.
Pamela. Cuneiform tablet says Matt. Shredded wheat says Matthew.
Very
And
clever.
somebody has suggested a very young Mehmet on the right
It
there.
was, I guess, 14, 15 years ago in British Museum. Thank you very much. Both of these are from British Museum. Yeah, except from younger Mehmet. The one that I'm standing before is Rosetta Stone, and it's one of the earliest manuscripts and engagements, written in treatments in 3 languages. If I'm not mistaken, one of the languages was ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, the other is Phrygian, and the other is ancient Greek, if I'm not mistaken. Probably I'm mistaken. And the one on the left-hand side is the Amarna letters written in Akkadian, and they are some diplomatic writings and letters. And the common points of both of these 2 is not simply because they are both kept in the British Museum, but they are some of the earliest examples of corpora. Because thanks to these resources and the like, analyzing their linguistic properties, some archaic and maybe some traditional language, some old languages, ancient languages were transcribed and interpreted, such as the ancient Egyptian. I was very interested in corpus linguistics in general during my postgraduate degree studies, but I was more interested in the modern versions of them rather than the earlier examples of them. I was mostly interested in the software-based corpus analysis, but it was not for the sake of simply being interested in something. While doing my MA degree and my PhD degree, I wanted to prioritize my own issues, the challenges in my very own ecosystem, in my very own setting. And that was basically my student setting. I was at an EMI university, like I said, and I was in charge with teaching English for for the prospective EMI students. And I wanted to stress out their problems. And their very fundamental problem was the very same problem, the language divide, language content divide that they face in their EMI years at the faculty, in their content courses. In order to support them, I wanted to focus on corpus and how I could get the utmost benefit from corpus study. Because you know what they say, corpus linguistics, there are two types of linguistics. One is applied linguistics, the other is armchair linguistics, they say. And for most, corpus linguistics appear as if armchair linguistics, the theoretical side, and working with text rather than people. But I don't perceive it that way on my own. I wanted to implement corpus analysis in the real world setting and wanted to compose an EAP corpus together with my pre-sessional students, EMI students, and we collected and compiled lots of textbooks at our university. And I wanted them to write, first I analyzed the commonest vocabulary in these texts, and then I wanted my students to write narrative nonfiction prose texts upon it. And we investigated the texts using Wordsmith software, and I also got benefit from British National Corpus and the other corpora. And they really benefited from it, at least they reflected so. And during my PhD dissertation, I wanted to went one step further, and we used Princeton University's WordNet project in order for the semantic relatedness of the words, because it gives more insightful deeds about the word families and their relatedness. And it was also very helpful for my students. At least I thought so. This is my first milestone at the background of our current study, my exposure to corpus. And the second exposure I can count here is my former university, again, where I was affiliated, is at the southeastern region of Turkey, very close to Syrian border, and we had lots of international students. But when I say international students, unfortunately, most of these students were the refugees from Afghanistan, from the Turkic countries whose mother tongue is either one of the Turkic languages or the Russian, from Iran, from African countries, but basically from Syria right after the political unease out there. And unfortunately, most of these students were unattended to the classes owing to their issues in their camps. And in order to support my students outside the class, I thought maybe I could engage them in using a chatbot. I did it, but I didn't utilize it for my thesis. But while searching for a better option, I came across this 2009 video. Maybe we can watch it for a while. I don't know if you will be able to hear it or not, but let me know if there has any issues.
The first time Albert Einstein locks eyes with you, it can be an intense experience. The super-realistic Einstein robot, an emotionally intelligent machine modeled after the famed physicist, can track your eye movements, respond to audio cues, and mimic your facial expressions, much like a real human. The head and shoulders automaton was built at Hanson Robotics in Texas, and it uses 31 internal motors to evoke expressions of happiness, sadness, anger, fear, or confusion. But what makes Einstein seem so human is its software, developed by scientists in the Machine Perception Laboratory at the California Institute for Telecommunications and Information Technology at UC San Diego. Lab director Javier Movillan developed the software that allows the robot to recognize facial expressions on people around it. The software allows Einstein to observe and understand human stimuli and to respond in a relatively natural way. It even recognizes facial cues suggesting age and gender, or whether the person interacting with it is wearing glasses. The robot's parallel facial action coding system can also detect simple gestures like nods and mimic those reactions. Scientists are hoping
I want to draw your attention at this very point indeed.
Use the Einstein robot to better understand the interaction between humans and robots. It could also be used as a platform for entertainment, fine arts, cognitive therapy, and even education. Indeed, the UC San Diego scientists already have plans to deploy the robotic head in a high school classroom to see if learning from Albert Einstein himself might be one way to engage teenagers more fully in physics, math, and other sciences.
So